Hey, welcome to the show. Hey, today we're going to talk a little bit about my experience with federal prison and my federal indictment. Back in 2007, I was 2007, I was handed a gag order from a state representative that stated any appraisals that they brought to me and requested to see that I had to give them those files. And they were particularly talking about other appraisals that we did review work on. Some of the appraisals that my guys that were appraisals in my office worked on. And I was on that gag order for 13 months. And then one day that same state investigator walked in and handed me a federal indictment on conspiracy to commit mortgage fraud. I had no idea how serious the situation was. In fact, a half an hour later, I left to drive to St. George, Utah, 3.5 hours down the road to check on one of my real estate developments. And as I was driving down there, I got a call from the local NBC affiliate, KSL here out of Salt Lake City. And the reporter was asking me what the statement I wanted to make regarding this new indictment that had been unsealed that day, charging me, and I believe it was 5 others in this mortgage conspiracy case. And I simply told her that when the truth comes out, I'll give you a call. That's how naive I was to what was going on, and how naive I was to thinking that the main guy that was doing these double closes would let us know, or let the feds know, that we didn't have anything to do with it, because this was a guy that I had known really since I was a little kid. His dad and my dad were like best friends. Neither one of them had brothers, and they did many real estate developments together. My dad was a dentist. He was an orthodontist. And my folks were supposed to be on a plane January 9th of 1979 with his parents, but my folks backed out the night before. The 2 youngest daughters of the guy in my case, the main guy behind it, they went to my place of my parents, and that plane crashed and it killed everybody. So was there guilt by association? Probably. I also had allowed him on my American Express Centurion account, and he charged a bunch of money. And so when he paid it off, which I had to pull teeth to get paid off usually, of course, I had money coming into my appraisal firm from him. So it showed I had money coming from him. It was easily documented. But long story short, I'm indicted, and I don't know that it's that serious. Then when the news calls, I start thinking more about it. I get to St. George, and I just decided, you know what, this has got to be pretty serious. I had now heard it on the radio as well, driving, and I better go back home so I can be with my family, and also to go talk to my attorney the next morning. So that's kind of what happened. And when you're a target of a federal investigation like that, you're supposed to know. I was never told that. I was just given the gag order, and frankly, I didn't tell even my wife. And anyway, surprisingly, but I didn't, because I didn't think anything of it. It was no big deal the way I looked at it, because what did it mean? I mean, nothing. I just give them it, any files of appraisals. There's nothing wrong, so it's not a big deal. But boy, was I wrong. So I go and meet with my attorney up in Park City the next morning, who was a very good real estate attorney and an incredibly bright guy, but one hell of a arrogant guy. Because anyway, first of all, he put his arm around me. He said, "Steve, I got your back." Well, he was not a criminal defense attorney, certainly not a federal criminal defense attorney for white collar crime. And knowing what I know now, he should have never taken my case. In fact, he definitely should have referred me out. If anything, he just could have stayed involved, whether it be second chair, whatever, but his ego wouldn't allow it. Plus, hey, now I've got Steve that's going to need a lot of legal work, a lot of hours, and perfect. Make a bunch of money, which he did. I went to Park City on 5 occasions to meet with him about my case. Every single time we walked to the Marriott, which is close to his office, and had lunch. and did not talk much about my case. In fact, we never went over any documents, never discussed any details. I had plenty of things to prove, at least in my opinion, that I didn't conspire with anybody to have these mortgage double close situations that were looking as if it was an investor buying a property from a homeowner, which this was kind of the first ones happening, evidently. And they definitely made an example out of us. In fact, the judge at sentencing stated that and made it very clear. And I keep looking to the side because it's kind of weird just looking at myself because I'm recording this also on video. But anyways, the last meeting we had, I had spent 2 weeks putting together a huge binder, like a 3 or 4 inch 3-ring binder with all the emails and correspondence and things that indexed everything to show how this proved that, etc. And I frankly wasn't even involved in my appraisal business much at the time, doing much of the work. I had 7 appraisers doing most of the work, and I was actually focused in doing a lot of my real estate development as well as importing products from China and dealing with a nonprofit I had started that raised money for the armed forces and their families. And so I was blindsided by this. But anyway, then I get an attorney that I wanted to fire because I just didn't feel like anything was being done. But out of fear of, will it make things worse on me? I didn't fire him. And anyway, as I put that binder together, I met with him on a Friday morning. And as soon as we sat in the conference room, he said, "Hey, we need to write out your plea statement." And I was like, "What in the hell are you talking about, Joe? We've talked about going to trial on this deal." Now, at this point, I had also realized the risk of going to trial in a federal case because you do not get a fair fight. Whether you're guilty or not guilty is irrelevant. It's not a fair fight. And he basically promised me after I showed him what I had that he'd go over it on the weekend and we'd talk again Monday morning because trial was like the week after that, starting that Monday. So I got a call on Sunday morning around 9 a.m. from my attorney telling me we were meeting with the feds that night at 6 p.m. in Salt Lake City. And that was that. I freaked out. I was scared to death. I didn't know what to do. And I just decided that I better go talk to my parents. And I went down to their house, told them what was up. And the only thing we could think of is, man, it's time to pray. And that morning I prayed like I've never prayed in my life, because the issue was, I'm going to go and plea and say I'm guilty to something that there's no doubt I didn't conspire with anybody to create any deals to make a dime. And I could prove I never got paid a dime other than the appraisal fees that were paid to my office, that my appraisers got 52% of the revenue. Then we had overhead. I might have made $300 to $500 tops. We billed out the standard $1,200 for a big jumbo, when the appraisers that had higher values because they funded off my guys' appraisals were charging $5,000 an appraisal. Now that's enticement to hit a value. We came in $300 to $400 lower than every one of those appraisals on the properties included in this case. So I had to know and have peace or whatever, that going and playing out that night was what I needed to do. And that was a huge conflict. And so as I poured out my soul to God, when I finished, I did have this peace come over me, which also freaked me out, because I knew if I was pleading, there's no doubt I'm going to prison. I'm leaving my family and I'm going to prison. So I met with him that night with the feds at 6. He pulled me out twice. My attorney pulled me out twice in the hall and just ripped me. "You mother effer, when are you going to F and roll over on Clark and Kitchen and blah, blah, blah?" And I was like, first of all, Joe, you jackass, if I had anything personally on these guys that would keep me out of prison and home with my family, you must be an idiot to think I wouldn't do that. Everybody acts tough and says they would never do this or do that and blah, blah, blah. That's just a bunch of BS. And I'm not too ashamed to admit it. I don't know anything but anybody but me and my family. And most of my life, I put everybody first in a lot of things that I've done. So I went and basically did what I said. My attorney never looked at that binder, never went through it. And then I was so pissed. And like I said, I wanted to fire him sooner. And after the plea, 4 or 6 weeks later, I decided I was going to fire him. I was $130,000 into paying him, and he hadn't done squat for the most part. I mean, he certainly hadn't earned that kind of money. Prior to that call on Sunday, when I met with him Friday, assuming we were going to court at that point, he also told me we need to put another $100,000 into the tank. And I just said, that's not even an option. Might pay as we go, but I'm certainly not fronting another 100 grand. I'm already 130 in. It's not like I'm not good for it at that point. I haven't proved that I'm not going to pay you. So anyway, so I pled. I was scared. I was frustrated. I was angry. I was depressed. You name it, I felt it. So I started calling around. My dad started calling some of his contacts. A guy in our neighborhood growing up as a kid defended the Lafferty brothers, who I think raped and killed. I can't remember the story exactly, but it's a bad case. And, they were life sentences. And he actually, the words he told my dad, he said, Sherm, I stopped doing federal defense 11 years ago because I couldn't give my clients a fair defense in the federal system. And that's 100% the way it is. The state investigator that handed me that gag order and my indictment literally purged himself on the stand in a hearing, and nothing happened to him because he's the star witness for the feds. And unless they want to do something, nothing can be done. Kind of like the BS you see in our government every single day, whether it's current situations or pre-Trump situations. It's a joke. They play by their own rules, period. So, hire a new attorney. He agrees to take me through sentencing. Says it's 10 grand. I started realizing then that these attorneys don't do squat for the most part. They will rarely, less than 1% of the time, win a federal case, and only 4% go to trial of federal cases. 96% plea out. So I hoped he could at least mitigate my situation, but he doesn't do that. In the meantime, I started doing some research and found some, quote, experts that's what they do. They work with attorneys to help mitigate sentencing. But their egos rarely allow it. I found a lady that her resume was phenomenal. I talked to a couple of past clients, and she did a great job. Once again, my attorney was a total dick about it. Looking back, I didn't demand what I should have because I'm the client, I'm the one paying the bill. But I was intimidated, I was scared, I was unsure. And those were huge mistakes looking back. I would never do that again. I would have fired my first attorney 6-8 months prior when I wanted to, and I would have said, this is what we're doing. I would have been calling shots. I would let them advise me based on information they had, but then I would demand that they look at this, this, and this, give me the feedback, then I'm going to make the decisions on how we move forward. But that's not what I did. So we go to, first of all, there's a restitution hearing. I'm with a buddy at that tells me not to sign it because I did not financially gain 1 penny. Absolutely, without a doubt, can document that, prove that without a doubt. It's for a $5.5 million restitution joint and severally with 4 or 5 other defendants. My buddy says, don't sign it. My attorney doesn't even show up. He sends someone from his office, a paralegal, and I tell her I'm not signing it. She gets the attorney on the phone, and he intimidates me and basically tells me that I have no choice, yada, yada. Once again, bad decision. I don't know what would have happened if I demanded, no way am I doing it, or whatever. But bottom line, I should have at least been able to mitigate that. If it didn't reduce my sentence, at least mitigate my restitution situation, Maybe that's not possible. I don't know, but that's something that should have been answered and I should have known. So I signed it. I've been out of prison 10 years this past September 15th. Right now it's December 8th, 2020. So 10 plus years. I'm still paying restitution every month. They want 10% of my gross of anything I make. It's a pain in the butt. I got to turn in all my financial documents, bills, check, bank statements, you name it, every 2 years so they can decide how much my restitution is. I've paid, after the first restitution payment of $400 years and years ago, 10 years ago, plus since I've been out of prison, because I was paying it when I was on probation. That first $400, I paid back $400 more than I ever made off this case that I supposedly conspired and made money on. So talk about unfair, talk about a screw job. It's a joke. And that will last for a total of 20 years from what I've been told and read. So I've got another 9 to 10. So I'm dealing with that. It stinks. So we go to sentencing and I get sentenced 33 months. Now, as you know, I'm a recovering addict. And because of fear, once again, no input or advice from my attorney, when you have a pre-sentence report, that's that's a huge, huge part of what influences the judge to sentence you. They're mandatory minimums, so they're guidelines he's going by. But as an addict, a recovering addict, I could have documented I had issues with addiction. It would have qualified me for the RDAP program, which is the only thing other than ratting out somebody on another case where it truly benefits the feds to prosecute somebody that you can get out of federal prison early. Now, until COVID, there's people who've gotten out of the camp I was at early that still had a few years, which is crazy, but COVID's a different animal. But other than those things, it doesn't happen. So I planned on that, but I didn't say anything about it in my pre-sentence report. 100% again, out of fear, the unknown, not being guided and told by my attorney. So I actually paid a consultant, a guy named Larry Levine, who was on every news channel you can think of when Bernie Madoff was going down as the prison consultant. I paid him to get information to assure me into RDAP, $1,500 when I had nothing. I'd basically lost everything through a real estate development in 06, October 06. I get indicted December of 07. The market crashes. I'm in real estate, lose everything there, and now losing my business. So it was ugly. So I pay him $1,500. He gets me on the phone with some psychiatrist. They get me a letter that's going to show that I had the problem with addiction. And that did nothing other than screw me out of $1,500. I self-surrendered to prison July 1st of 2009 on a 33-month sentence. I had always planned on getting RDAP, and that can get you out up to a year early. So I had assumed I'd do 15, 16 months to, on the high side, 22. I get in there. They have a doctor on staff over the RDAP program, and he basically turned me down. I was devastated, as you can imagine, because I had planned on a certain time. Now I'm looking at my 33 months less, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 halfway house. But in Florence, Colorado, you rarely get the 6 months you could get, and oftentimes don't get 3 because they are hardcore and they are jerks. That's where the ADX Supermax prison is. That's where I worked for my first job while I was there, buffing the floors and cleaning the visiting room. And the same COs that are over the ADX are the same ones over the camp, the camp level, which is, low security. But there was 4 prisons in walking distance: the ADX Supermax, United States Penn, and the medium, and then the camp. And basically all the camp inmates do all the labor for the most part at all the other prisons, food service to cleaning to you name it. So I got turned down. I was devastated. Luckily, the counselor at Dayspring at Utah Valley Hospital that I went through when I got sober, I got to know very well. So I sent a letter in and asked her if she could send documentation in. She did that. I'll never forget having my call him bunkie, not a cellmate really, because I was never locked up. It was not like a cell with, wasn't a typical prison cell. It was just cinder block walls, every, hallway down the middle of the wing. I can't remember, 6 by 10, maybe, if that's maybe not even that big, but area with two little, beds in it with two lockers, and that's all you had. It's about 6 feet tall. I could look over the top. So, but my first bunkie was actually a guy in my case, and I totally lost my train of thought. But when so I was sleeping one morning, and my bunkie is tapping on, metal type bunk beds. There was only two of us in the thing at the time, but there can be up to four in those little 6 by 10 with lockers that you should put your clothes and, any food that maybe you buy at the commissary. And he taps it, wakes me up, and I look up, and there's the doctor from the RDAP program, and he's like, "Cloward, here, I need you to sign here." Sign that, and I'm in the RDAP program. So I ended up getting out just under a year early, ended up being 14 and a half months. A lot of guys made fun of me and like, "Cloward, I can do that on my head, blah, blah, blah." To me, one day in prison is too long. One day away from my family and my freedom is too long. But I got in, ended up doing my time. It was brutal for me the first 6-8 weeks, because all of a sudden I'm thrown into an environment where I have no control. And for my entire life, I had control until this federal indictment and prison. I was always able to deal with problems and solve problems and deal with situations and handle them. This was the first time I couldn't. I played a lot of cards. I read 114 books in 14 months. There was a lot of different type of inmates in there, people that have been in USPs and graduated down. There was lots of white collar guys, but a ton of drug dealers. And that's what I found, is all these drug dealers were in the RDAP program, and almost 99% of them didn't even do drugs or have a drug problem, but their attorneys told them how to get out early and how to deal with the system. Some people might say that's dishonest to say you had a drug problem or not. Frankly, I don't care. Our federal government's dishonest as hell. You can call it, you can say I'm justifying it or whatever, but I didn't have to lie. But for that, would I have lied? Absolutely. I'm not going to lie that I wouldn't have, because I would have. That system's such a joke and such a waste that whatever I could do to beat it, I would have done. So there I am playing cards. I played cards with, I even, there were probably several different names in there that had national cases. The biggest probably was Andy Fastow of Enron, super great guy, actually. Really smart guy, great at chess. I never played him chess because he'd whoop you. But a lot of wasted time, It's really sad. There's no doubt people that deserve to be in prison. Whether I would have been in or not, I think I'd have the same opinion. It might seem biased, but white collar, non-violent crimes, I don't think should be wasting time and tax dollars in prisons. There should be sentences and accountability, no doubt. What that is, I don't have the answer. But certainly not sitting there wasting time for years, months, to me is valuable to anybody. But what I can say is it messed me up. I got out. I was no longer a praiser. I had no resources. I have a big F on my forehead. My confidence was gone. I really didn't know who I was, because it's like, when you don't have your job or your business anymore, it's like, maybe it's a male thing. Maybe it's not just a male thing, but I remember my dad, when he retired as a dentist, he felt like he lost his identity. He'd been a Dr. Cloward his whole life. I know what he means now, because that's the way I felt. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't feel worthy to go and network and utilize my contacts that I had. I know that most people had no problem with the situation. In fact, the mantra I lived by was prior to even going when I got indicted was, for those that know me, no explanation is necessary. For those that don't, no explanation will be good enough. Because the people that are happy that people are crashing and burning are talking about, those that do and say, no, I'm sure they deserve it, blah, blah, blah. First of all, you don't know the facts of anybody's situation unless you're in their shoes. But typically when we do that, and I'm guilty of that in my life, certainly. In fact, I'm sure I do it occasionally still after what I've learned. But we do those things because we're usually talking about how we feel about ourselves in situations. The finger is usually pointing back at us. In fact, if that saying, if you're pointing at somebody, you got three fingers pointing back at you, that's truly what's happening. In fact, a great book, if you want to look into it, if you're struggling with some of that stuff or, unhappy with relationship or current circumstances, go get the book Loving What Is by Byron Katie. It's a phenomenal book. It'll walk you through exactly what I'm talking about, the turnaround, and she'll tell stories about people she's interviewing and talking to about the circumstance, the things they complain with, and she explains it, how it's truly a reflection of how they feel about themselves. It's incredibly powerful. But see, because of what happened, and even though I have an incredible wife who stuck by me through addiction, 14 years of addiction to opiates, loss of trust, and a lot of dumb things I did and put her through, separation 3 times in 18 months when we're barely not quite married, 2 years, and now prison. Even though she knows I didn't deserve to go to prison, there's actions things I did when I was an addict that could have certainly got me put in jail, no doubt. She knew I didn't deserve to go to prison, but it triggered everything, all the insecurities that were created through my addiction. So when I got out, she wasn't sure what was up. She wasn't sure how she felt. She wasn't sure what the future held. I mean, she told me that it was brutal. It was tough. But I knew that we could make it. In fact, I had a situation in prison. Here I am feeling sorry for myself. I'm in prison, but yet once you get over the mental hurdles of you can't do anything to control the outside, you really can't do anything to help your family other than maybe take care of yourself and not try to project and have them worry about you, not expect letters, not expect certain things when you call home. If you would focus on them, that's about the only thing you control in helping the situation. But I was the victim at that point. I remember calling home 3 weeks in and literally saying to her, do you even care about me? Because she was cold, but it wasn't so much that she was cold. She was stressed out. She was stressed to death. No security. I had lost everything, no income. She went from working 1 day as a week as a nurse to working 3 to get insurance. So talk about prison. She was in prison, not me. But when I asked her that, do you even care about me? She said, I don't have time to worry about you. I felt like I got freaking my heart ripped out. So I went back to my cubicle, my bed, whatever. And that was the second time that I prayed like I hadn't prayed before. And when I was done, I had that same feeling, like everything was cool. I was at peace, and I knew that everything was good. It was going to work out. So when I got home, things were not great, but I knew if I focused on her doing my part, it would make it. And that's what I did. And it got very frustrating at times because I expected certain things, but that's not fair. It has to work on her timetable based on what I'm doing. Now, it'd be nice, that to hear that, yeah, I'm committed, but hey, if somebody's in a situation that they can't say that, you don't want them to say it if they can't. But I kept falling back on, I knew it would work out. I just got to be patient, man. I looked at all the bullshit I put her through and the hell I had put her through because it was a ton. I would say most marriages wouldn't last through the crap I put her through. And so once I owned and realized that, all I could do was try to prove to her that that dude's dead. He's gone. This is a different guy. This is the guy you married before the addiction kicked in hardcore. And I had to start treating her like the queen that she was. And I had to start investing in the relationship. To see, why is it that when we're courting someone and dating someone, we put effort and energy into the dates and the time we spend and the way we treat them. But then once we're married, as time passes, you can grow apart if you're not investing. You've got to invest in your relationships. See, her and I, we have date night once a week, period. It's non-negotiable. It doesn't happen. We usually go to the movies. With COVID. That hasn't happened a lot. So we might just go for a drive, or we might just watch a movie in our room with, letting those at home know that, hey, we're checked out for the rest of the night. But you've got to invest and make each other a priority. That goes whether you put your spouse through addiction, indictment, or whatever. That goes for, anybody doesn't have major bumps, but we all have difficult stuff. We all have trials. We all have stories. And there's no such thing as a perfect marriage. The perfect marriage, if there's anything close to it, it's because they invest like crazy in it and they make each other important. So regardless of what you've been through, you've got to invest in your relationship just like you do anything else in your life if you want it to freaking grow. Because if you're stagnant, things are going to slowly die. And that's what had happened. I had made such, quite a bit of money. So we were coexisting. And she was putting up with it for the most part because, I was kind of a prideful dick. And she could still go and do what she wanted. This time in our lives, our kids were younger. And so they were taking a huge part of her time. And so, it affected her, but not as much as it would if she didn't have something occupying her time like her kids. Now, granted, I was there and doing a lot of stuff and coaching my kids, and we were going on vacation, spending time together, but I wasn't present, not only because of the drugs for, decade and a half, because I had so much going on, so many businesses, that even if I was coaching my boys in football or baseball, which I did a lot of that stuff, I still wasn't present. When I'm coaching, I have to be more so. But if I wasn't coaching at certain ages or certain years and I was at their games watching, I'm still dealing with stuff on business. I'm on my phone. That's not the way to do it. If you're going to invest your time in your kids or your spouse, you need to be present. You would expect it. You would deserve it. They expect it, and they should get it. So I get out of prison. Like I said, it took me 8.5 of the last 10 plus years to finally reclaim who I was, to forgive my attorney, the main guy in my case, and to forgive myself for who I had been, because I had beat myself up big time about how I treated my wife. When you get 14.5 months to look at the man in the mirror, it's pretty scary sometimes. So I knew I had to step it up and I had to become the man that not only my wife deserved, my kids deserved. I'm incredibly blessed. I have 5 great kids. None of them have been into drugs and alcohol or given us any trouble. And thank the good Lord, nobody's had major health issues or anything like that. I think I've created enough hell for most of us in my life. So maybe that's part of it. But we all have struggles. We all have trials. And I know we'll have some down the road. That's just life. But it's how we respond to them that defines us. I was letting the past get in the way of my future. I was letting the past define to me who I used to be, and that I wasn't that same guy. In fact, I wasn't a better version of that guy, because that's who I am today. But I was looking at myself from only a business and income standpoint pre-prison, and not giving myself any credit of who I was post-prison, because I was kind of jumping around and just getting by at times, making good money a little bit here and there, but really not providing the security, not just financially, but stably with what I focused on and stuck to. And that's what I've finally done. I'm doing what matters to me, what I'm passionate about, and that's to help other people who are going through the hell that life can dish out and struggling to figure out how to get through it, to reclaim their life again. So if you want to reclaim your life again, shoot me a message on Facebook. Come join my free group, Life After Addiction and Indictment. Or check out, my website, lifeafteraddictionindictment.com. I wish y'all the luck. I've been through enough. The last 8.5 years, I've spent over $100,000 with coaches, consultants, masterminds, events, different things, courses to learn different things so you don't have to waste the next 8.5 years of your life trying to reclaim your life again. You can do it in just a few simple months with some of the tools, the tricks, tips, hacks, things that I've learned reading the certain books, understanding your mindset, understanding what's going on in your mind and the self-talk that's happening that's holding you back, the self-sabotage. You don't need to waste 8.5 years going through that. So come join the Facebook group, Life After Addiction Indictment. I hope you have a fantastic day. And as always, go make it happen.